They said it couldn't be done. Steel walls 3 feet thick, motion sensors that could detect a heartbeat, laser grids programmed to catch even shadows, and inside $100 million in diamonds sitting in what experts called the most secure vault ever built. But someone walked right in, took what they wanted, and left without triggering a single alarm. What they did next will make you question everything you thought you knew about security. This isn't about brute force or movie-style explosions. This is about something far more dangerous. A mind that understood one simple truth that engineers and security experts refuse to admit. Every system, no matter how perfect, has a flaw. And that flaw isn't in the technology. It's in us, in the way we think, the way we trust, and the way we assume we're safe. What happened inside that vault wasn't just a robbery. It was a masterclass in human psychology. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the person who did this was never supposed to exist. Let me paint the picture for you. The vault was located in a secure facility that handled precious stones for international dealers. The building itself was surrounded by cameras monitored 24 hours a day. Armed guards rotated shifts every 6 hours. The vault room required biometric scanning, fingerprint recognition, and a 16-digit code that changed daily. Once you got past all of that, you still had to deal with the vault door itself. 7,000 pounds of reinforced steel with a time lock mechanism that couldn't be overridden even by the people who owned it. Inside the vault, the security was even more extreme. Pressure-sensitive floors that would trigger alarms if weight distribution changed, infrared laser beams crisscrossing the room in patterns that shifted every 30 seconds, motion detectors calibrated to pick up movement as small as a hand gesture, and everything was connected directly to the local police station. Any breach, any anomaly, and armed officers would arrive in under 4 minutes. The diamonds inside were stored in individual cases, each one tagged with tracking devices. The entire system was designed by a team that spent 3 years planning for every possible scenario. Break-ins, explosives, tunneling, hacking, power outages, even insider jobs. They thought they had covered everything. They were wrong. The theft wasn't discovered for 3 days, 3 entire days. And when they finally realized what happened, the shock wasn't just about the missing diamonds. It was about how it was done. Because nothing was broken, nothing was forced, no alarms were triggered, no codes were cracked. The vault opened exactly the way it was supposed to, as if someone with full authorization had simply walked in and helped themselves. Except that person didn't exist in any database. No employee records, no contractor logs, no visitor sign-ins. It was like a ghost had entered the building. Here's where it gets disturbing. Investigators started pulling surveillance footage, expecting to see someone sneaking through shadows or disabling cameras. Instead, they saw something that made their blood run cold. They saw a man in a maintenance uniform walking through the facility during normal business hours. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't rushing. He moved with the kind of casual confidence that comes from belonging somewhere. Security guards saw him multiple times. Some even nodded at him in passing. But when investigators tried to identify him, they hit a wall. He wasn't in the system. Nobody knew his name. Yet somehow everyone felt like they recognized him. This is where the psychology gets fascinating and terrifying. The mastermind behind this heist understood something that most people never think about. Security systems are only as strong as the humans operating them. Technology can be perfect, but people are not. We take shortcuts, we make assumptions, we trust our instincts even when our instincts are wrong, and he exploited every single one of those weaknesses. Months before the theft, he started what experts now call social reconnaissance. He didn't study the vault itself. He studied the people around it. He learned their routines, their behaviors, their blind spots. He figured out which guards checked badges carefully and which ones barely glanced. He identified which security cameras were watched live and which ones were only reviewed after incidents. He discovered that maintenance workers could move through certain areas without raising suspicion because they were part of the background. Invisible. So he became invisible. He bought a uniform that matched the maintenance company contracted by the facility. Not a fake uniform. An actual one purchased through a supply company that asked no questions. He carried tools that looked authentic because they were authentic. He even wore a name badge with a barcode that wouldn't scan, but looked real enough that nobody bothered to check. And then he did something brilliant. He started showing up, not to steal anything, just to be seen. He would walk into the building, smile at the guards, and fix minor things. A loose door handle, a flickering light, small helpful tasks that made people think he was supposed to be there. He did this for 2 months. 2 months of building familiarity, of training the security staff to see his face and register it as safe. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. The more we see something, the more we trust it, even if we don't consciously remember it. He was programming the guards to accept him without realizing it. And it worked. By the time he was ready to make his move, security barely registered his presence. He had become part of the environment. The night of the heist, he didn't break in. He walked in. During a shift change when attention was divided and protocols got sloppy. He signed in using a fake name that was close enough to a real contractor's name that nobody questioned it. He carried a large toolbox and a tablet that displayed technical diagrams. When a guard asked what he was doing, he said he was checking on a ventilation issue that had been reported earlier. There was no reported issue, but the guard didn't verify. Why would he? This was the guy who had been helping around the facility for weeks. Once inside, he headed straight for the maintenance corridor that ran behind the vault room. This passage was considered too narrow and too dangerous for a real robbery attempt. The walls were barely 2 feet apart. The air was thin, and there were sensors built into the structure that would detect drilling or cutting. But he wasn't planning to drill or cut. He was planning to squeeze through a gap that engineers swore was too small for a human body. They were almost right. It took him 40 minutes to navigate 10 feet. 40 minutes of controlled breathing, shallow movements, and absolute silence. One sudden motion, and the sensors would trigger. But he had practiced this. He knew exactly how slow he needed to move. When he finally reached the vault room, he faced the laser grid, 17 beams crisscrossing the space in patterns designed to be unpredictable. But they weren't actually unpredictable. They followed an algorithm. And algorithms can be learned. He had spent weeks timing the sequences using a micro camera he had planted during one of his maintenance visits. He knew that every 90 seconds there was a 3-second window where the beams aligned in a way that left a narrow path. 3 seconds. That was all he had. He moved through the opening with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times in his mind. No hesitation, no second guessing. Just execution. The diamonds were stored in locked cases, but he didn't try to force them open. He had brought a set of keys. Not master keys or stolen keys. Keys he had made himself after photographing the originals during his reconnaissance. In security systems, keys are often left in plain sight because people assume nobody would be bold enough to copy them. He was that bold. He opened 3 cases, took exactly 7 diamonds, and left the rest untouched. Not because he didn't want more, but because he understood human nature. If everything was stolen, the investigation would be immediate and intense. But if only a few items went missing, there would be confusion. Doubt. Maybe it was a counting error. Maybe someone misplaced them. By the time they realized it was theft, he would be long gone. He retraced his steps through the maintenance corridor, signed out at the front desk, even stopped to chat with a guard about an upcoming holiday. Then he walked out the door and disappeared. No high-speed chase, no dramatic escape, just a man leaving work at the end of his shift. 3 days later, when the missing diamonds were finally confirmed, everyone looked at the surveillance footage and saw him moving through the building with complete access, and nobody could explain how they missed it. What makes this case so chilling isn't just the theft itself, it's what it reveals about us. We like to believe that technology makes us safe, that cameras and sensors and alarms are enough to protect valuable things. But this heist proved something darker. The weakest point in any security system is the moment when a human being has to make a decision. Do I trust this person? Do I verify their credentials? Do I follow protocol, or do I take a shortcut because I'm tired or distracted or convinced that nothing bad will happen on my watch? The mastermind understood that security isn't really about locks and codes. It's about psychology. It's about exploiting the gap between what we think we see and what's actually happening. He knew that confidence can be mistaken for authority, that familiarity breeds trust even when it shouldn't, that people will believe what's convenient because questioning everything is exhausting. And he used those human flaws to walk through a vault that was supposed to be impenetrable. The diamonds were never recovered. The man was never caught. Some investigators believe he was a former security consultant who knew the industry inside and out. Others think he was a psychologist who understood behavioral patterns better than the people he was manipulating. But nobody knows for sure. What we do know is that after this heist, security companies around the world had to redesign their training programs, because they finally understood that the greatest threat isn't someone trying to break the system. It's someone who knows how to become part of it. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a demonstration, a proof of concept that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, it will never be smarter than a human mind that's determined to find a way through. And that's the lesson that should terrify us all. We're not as safe as we think we are, because the locks on our doors might be strong, but the assumptions in our heads are not. If this story made you rethink everything you thought about security, hit that subscribe button, because we have more mysteries that will change the way you see the world.